Hey guys, right now I'm going to be making the Ministry Progress Summary video here for events through October 23rd, 2022. So this video is coming out a little bit late. I just got really tied up with stuff this week, and I'll go over that in just a little and how I want to keep myself more consistent. But long story short, still kind of in the setup phase of things, still making more work, or sorry, rather making more progress on the workflow and continuing to get things set up on the discussion pages so that I can organize more content. Now we'll jump right into things here in a second with the outline, but just going to show my face here on screen, I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. I'm hoping that I only have like a week or two more here. I mean, I know I kind of said that last time too, but we'll get into a little bit of that as I go over the things I got done. But you may notice that the recording locale has changed here. I just kind of did decide, even though the lighting was good in the bathroom, right now I am actually in the master bedroom, so I've got the windows open, and I played with the color balance and stuff on the inside profile here, and I think this is like a little bit less strange than recording videos in the bathroom probably. And so I actually do have the wireless microphone going too as well. It's why I'm standing a little bit back here. So I have the lapel mic on my collar here, and then it's hooked up to the wireless receiver on the GoPro. So some of the video recording stuff starting to stabilize a bit, but I certainly won't bore everyone with the details on that. We'll go ahead and jump right into the actual content that I got done here in this 2-week cycle. All right, so these are the things here in the outline. First, I'm going to go over kind of why this video is a bit late and kind of how I want to do better on this in the future. Just keep myself very consistent, making these videos every couple weeks to keep the progress going. So I'm recording this probably like 6 days late here. I had intended to actually record it over the weekend, but I was really busy, and then stuff came up at work this week. And so, I'll go over that a little bit. I'm going to talk about how I continued to kind of change things with the video quality. I just mentioned that a little bit here, recording out in the bedroom with good natural light rather than artificial inside lights here. I set up more stuff with voice recognition. People may get kind of tired of me continuing to go over this, but it is kind of a big deal how I want to make things moving forward. This one's big. Dragon, which is the voice recognition software that I use, kind of only fully integrates with a few programs, and Microsoft Word is one of them. And because I write most of my content in Markdown, I had to figure out how to be able to write Markdown in Microsoft Word. So this was something that I was working on for quite a while here. I got the wireless microphone system set up. I mentioned that a little bit at the beginning of the video as well. I also completely tested out the portable dual 24-inch monitor setup. I'd mentioned that in a previous Ministry Progress summary, but I actually took it to the library, set up the full system. It takes a little bit to set up and tear down, but lets me be very productive if I do decide to go work out in a public place. I got the documentation written up for the discussion pages. This was one of the big outstanding to-dos I had for this phase. I did get blocked on some stuff, and that was because of path limitations in Microsoft Windows, so I'll get to that, maybe kind of explain this in over much detail here, but I was going to make even more progress organizing things this cycle, but ended up getting kind of blocked because of this issue I was having naming things. And then finally, we'll go over what the upcoming work that I'd like to get done is. So starting out here, we're going to be going over kind of why this video is coming out a little bit late. So the last one, which I did release on like a Friday, that one was late because I was actually having full technical problems. I was having issues with the video editing process that I had. I worked out some of the kinks. I was having video audio sync issues, having set up a new video profile on the GoPro, which was causing the audio to drift relative to the video. And it was kind of quite a chore to get it all ironed out last time, although I think I'm kind of on a better path here. So this time it wasn't so much that I was strictly prevented from making the video earlier as it was a bit of perfectionism here on my part. I kind of had a certain order I wanted to complete tasks in, but kept like not finishing things, and then that ended up pushing everything else back. So I could give kind of a bunch of reasons. I had to get my house inspected by the termite inspectors, to maintain the termite warranty I have, other practical stuff like that. I also worked like 3.5 hours of overtime one of the days this week because we were really busy, had deadlines and stuff at work. And so the basic gist though is that I just didn't prioritize getting this video out on the Sunday or the Monday this week. I didn't push everything else aside to keep that schedule. And kind of in the future here, I'm going to try not to let this happen again, where the video is coming, quite a bit later in the week, because I'm trying to hold myself to this 2-week pattern here to maintain that consistency. And so I'd like to have that consistency. I'd like to maintain that schedule, both for me to hold myself to it, and then also for people who follow these updates so that they can maintain that kind of consistent status on what's going on in the ministry. So moving forward, the goal may not exactly be every single Sunday. That's where the boundaries for things are. I'm doing things every other Sunday is kind of where I cut off the content boundaries for the tasks that I talk about in these updates. But it might roll to the Monday just because sometimes I have to process the video and things like that. But either the Sunday or the Monday every 2 weeks, that's when I'm hoping to have these videos out by. So saying that, being a little bit hypocritical here, that means that the next video from the time I'm actually recording this is only going to be in about a week. I mean, I have gotten some stuff done this week too, which I will talk about in that video. But all this to say, they're going to try to actually hold myself a little bit better to that time window of Sunday or Monday, rather than letting it slide back later in the week. So if I need to, I will bump other things on my task schedule to make sure that I maintain a bit better consistency with these videos here. So that preamble aside, going to go over just a couple more of the things that I'm trying to do to improve video quality here. So just going to really go through this quick. Like I mentioned, actually recording in the master bedroom right now. I had recorded the last video in the bathroom. One of the advantages of using like inside artificial light is that I don't have to only record videos when it's bright outside, but I could do it, later at night once the sun has gone down. But, even so, it's just kind of odd recording in the bathroom. So I thought better of it a little bit, just decided, probably just seems a bit more natural to record in a room. I've got like the bookcase in the background here and things like that. And so that's what I'm going to try to shoot for. It just means that I have to record the videos when it's bright outside, basically. And so I fiddled around with some GoPro settings still, made sure that I got the profile I'm shooting with the inside light here, with natural light coming in through the windows, make sure all of that is working well, things like that. But basically, for now, going to probably try recording in this setup here in the master bedroom for the foreseeable future, because it's a room where I can kind of be closed off, not bother my roommate or anyone else who's over and things like that. Now in the future, I might kind of get a more formal, like portable standing desk, something that has wheels, because I would want to actually take that out to go, if I have people over for Bible studies. We have the big projector out in the living room, and I'd want to have my presenting setup there as well, with the portable monitors, the dual 24-inch monitors that I've mentioned. For now, I kind of just like zip ties and duct tape put together like a platform assembly and then put the tripod on that. So I've actually got some like sheaves of printer paper, like 3 of them to raise it up a little bit. And I think it's going to work okay in the short term, but maybe longer term going to try to get a standing desk with wheels there to make it a little bit more of an official presenter platform. So I think that's all I'm going to say about this. I'm continuing to try to improve the video quality and the audio quality here with the mic as well, just to make sure that the quality of the content is as good as I can make it, given my somewhat limited set of skills and knowledge here. I think I'm getting better, but, it's certainly not something that I have a lot of formal training in, so self-taught for the most part. But I do think that things are better now than they were at the very beginning, for example. So going to keep trying to leverage that, make sure that the content ends up as good as I can make it. Next, going to talk a little bit about the things with respect to voice recognition that I got done this time. So I did add some custom vocabulary entries, more things for punctuation, also continuing to practice here to get that speed up and get my comfort with dictating sentences rather than typing things out a little bit faster. I also added a couple custom commands or shorter forms of commands that Dragon already has. So like one for adding new lines, their command for it is new line, but again, that is ambiguous possibly with things that you would say in normal speech. So I came up with my own brief for it. Then another one for deleting the last word. Their command for it is delete last word. That's just a little bit wordy, and so I came up with a single syllable thing that does the same thing, just deletes the last word, so kind of like control backspace. Now, this was important, especially towards the future here, as I start dictating full time and trying to do a lot of my editing with the dictation software as well, is there's a lot of commands that you can do with Dragon. So there's like commands to navigate around in a document, so that's like between paragraph sentences, beginning of the file, end of the file, things like that. You can select things, select arbitrary words in the sentence or phrases, like this word through that word, the entire sentence you're in, the next sentence, the last sentence, the next paragraph, the last paragraph, the current paragraph, all of those sorts of things. And then correction commands, which is if you are dictating something and Dragon gets it wrong because it, for example, mixes up homonyms or something, you can actually correct it, and then in the future it will remember that. So it's smart machine learning type thing. It will kind of correct itself over time as you train it. And so all of these things very important for getting faster with doing things with voice. Now, something that's important about all of this, and this drove much of the other workflow stuff that I did this cycle, is that these things can only happen in very specific applications where Dragon can fully track cursor position. So Microsoft Word is an example, also like OpenOffice and WordPerfect and a couple other programs, but the supported application list is actually pretty small. It's mostly like word processors. The kind of programmer text editors or IDEs that I've been using, like VS Code and IntelliJ, not on the list. And so if I want to be able to navigate by voice commands or select text by voice commands and do the correction so Dragon learns over time, I have to be in a program that actually supports Dragon tracking cursor position. And so Microsoft Word, definitely the biggest program, kind of like the one that is the most feature rich and well supported. Actually, I think it works about equally well in all of them. Microsoft Word just has a lot of features that might make it more attractive over other options. So that's what I decided to go with. And so for that reason, I actually needed to get Word. So far, I've kind of squeaked by just using the online form of the Microsoft like Office things. So Word and Excel, you can use them online for free. And so I've just been doing that because I don't really edit files that much. I write most of my stuff in Markdown and Google Docs. But decided that if I need this for Dragon, well then I'm gonna have to buy it. So I got an Office 365 subscription, got the Dragon add-in enabled there, and tested it out here. And then I tested out all of these commands that I was mentioning: the navigation commands, the selection commands, the correction commands. All of these things for Dragon to kind of unleash the full power of the voice recognition when I am dictating text here. So pretty happy with how it turned out, actually. I definitely need to practice a lot more before I'll kind of be able to do it more fluidly and kind of without pausing to think about what things I need to say to make it happen. Kind of get that it's not muscle memory, I guess, because you're talking, but the talking memory, very equivalent to muscle memory for keyboard shortcuts and stuff. But I am pretty happy with how it turns out. I think once I do practice and once I get this speed, I think it will work very well. So this was the things that I was setting up on the voice recognition front. Now, a big problem caused by this is that all of my stuff for static site generators, the content that I write for my websites, it's written in Markdown. And Microsoft Word usually does not use Markdown. It usually you usually edit Word documents in Word. So things with the docx file extension. But because all of my content is in Markdown, that's not going to change either, because the static site generators, so like not just the one I use, but almost all of them, use Markdown as what you write your content in. And so if I want to completely unleash the power of Dragon with all those types of commands I mentioned, the navigation commands, the selection commands, the correction commands, I will need to work in Microsoft Word or one of the other programs, but I picked Word, and so I need to work in Microsoft Word, but I need to figure out how to handle Markdown files in Microsoft Word. And by handle them, I mean like not just opening them up so that they're plain text, but I'd like syntax highlighting or something similar enough to it for the Markdown headers, and the ability to like open links, either control clicking them or things like that. And I basically decided I want to be able to actually use Markdown, edit Markdown in a fluid sort of way using Microsoft Word, where I have all of this power using the Dragon voice recognition commands. And so I actually did a bunch of research and found this add-in for Microsoft Word. It's a third-party paid extension that kind of does the heavy lifting to auto-convert between Markdown and Word when you're opening and saving files. And so if you have a Markdown file, you can open it in Microsoft Word, and then basically when it's opening it in Word, it will like convert it to Word behind the scenes. So you work with it like it's a normal Word file, and then when you save it, it auto converts it back to Markdown. So pretty neat. This is basically exactly what I wanted. So I bought it. It was not super cheap. It was more than $20, but a one-time licensing fee or whatever. It's called a Writage. So there's a link here. I'll go real briefly open this. And so it's this plugin for Microsoft Word that basically lets you do Markdown stuff in Microsoft Word. Now, of course, me being me, I did have some issues with it. It actually completely removes HTML, which kind of puzzling to me, since that was one of Markdown's big selling points, was that you can just kind of mix HTML with the text that you write. But Regardless, this plugin removes it. I guess it's probably just because it was designed kind of for normal people in mind. For me, I would have been more liable to kind of do things with pandoc, which is a command line converter for various file types. But that's not completely automated. I suppose I could set it up with like things that track if you save something and then auto-convert it. But this is more seamless. It's just that the parser isn't very flexible. So it strips HTML, which is annoying, and kind of auto / escapes number signs that aren't part of headers. So for example, I use them for anchor tags when I automatically generate headers with the preprocessor application, and then the angle brackets as well automatically escapes those. And so basically every time I run something through this plugin to work with something in Microsoft Word and then I save the file, it kind of messes up my Markdown file. Now, it's kind of a limited set of ways that it does this. It's not like it screws everything up. It's just these few things. And so I've decided that once I set it up and get it working, I'll be able to actually kind of write additional functionality in the preprocessor application that I've been writing in Python to after I have been editing these files in Microsoft Word. I'll just have to rerun the preprocessor, which I do anyway to build the subject index. And I just have to be smart and kind of undo the ways in which this plugin messes up my Markdown files. Now, it's not awful. It's just that because their parser doesn't have any customization, like I can't tell it, hey, I don't want you to do this. I can't check some checkboxes and say, turn off this feature. Basically, I would just rather it doesn't mess with my files that much, but it kind of does these things, and I guess probably just because it's trying to be user-friendly and stuff for people who aren't familiar with Markdown, whereas for me, I'm very familiar with Markdown, and I've used it almost exclusively for the last 5 years or so. It's just, I need to do it in Word. And so I think it's kind of going the other way, and that's why it's kind of frustrating for me. But, I think I'll be able to, write my application to kind of undo the things that are supposed to be helpful so that it will actually work for my use case. And that way I will be able to write Markdown files in Microsoft Word, where I can use all of the Dragon commands. Now, one other thing to note, I was actually pretty delighted that it supports tables and footnotes exactly how you have them in Word. And so you have WYSIWYG tables and footnotes on the bottom of the page. And honestly, these things actually work better in Word than they have been in the text editors that I've been using. So there are like keyboard shortcuts where you can like tab between cells in tables in things like VS Code or the Markdown plugin for IntelliJ. So it's not like they're awful in those, but the what you see is what you get. That's what WYSIWYG stand for. Tables in Microsoft Word definitely better. It's just a little bit easier to work with, I think. And so I was happy to see that it just kind of supports it out of the box. It uses the GitHub flavored Markdown tables. And so I'm not like unhappy with this plugin. I just wish that there was a bit more customization so that it didn't break things in my workflow so much. But I think it'll be fixable. The one thing that won't be super fixable is the stripping out of HTML. That's just kind of like tough. I will have to refactor to use make my own comment shortcode in my static site generator to get around that. So a few pain points of frustration here, but this was something that I spent time on so that moving forward in the future, I'll be able to draft all my content with voice recognition in Markdown. Maybe not very interesting for most people, but will be very important in the future as I continue chipping away at this voice recognition stuff to try to be faster and faster in how I draft content. One other thing I did after I got Word set up initially, I did a bunch of customization type stuff. So I set up custom styling for the headers. I kind of reduced the font size so that headers were just color coded rather than being really big, so they take up less space on the screen. And then keyboard shortcuts for navigating the menus and the file outline. Then voice commands for changing between the header formatting. So I'll say something like header 3, and then that will apply the header 3 styling, or normal text, and that will change the styling back to normal text, things like that. Voice recognition commands specific for how I'm setting things up in Microsoft Word. And then, just a bunch of other workflow details. And I'm not going to try to bore everyone with the technobabble here, but there's like a lot of configuration, more things like that, and I'm not even completely done. I mentioned that I will be able to fix some of the problems that this plugin causes in my Markdown files, but I didn't actually do that this time. I just kind of like reasoned my way through it and figured out it would be possible, so that this actually will be a solution to being able to write Markdown in Microsoft Word. I'll just have to go do that at some point before I start doing this kind of more full-time. So I'll stop rambling there. This also real quick, I did get the wireless microphone system set up. Again, I'm actually using it to record this right now. It did take me a while to get everything set up and figure out how it all connects together and the wireless signal, and I did also do a good bit of research here, kind of figuring out how to adjust gain settings properly. So kind of the balance between getting strong input signal levels while leaving enough headroom so that you don't clip. So that you leave enough ceiling here that you don't exceed the 0 decibel threshold where you start getting clipping in your audio. So, I again, not pretending to be professional here. I'm learning as I go, although I do think I am gaining enough knowledge in these things that hopefully the content quality will keep improving over time. But so, it's worked pretty well. I'm happy with the purchase. I mean, it was expensive enough, but the wireless receivers, they work with the GoPro. And in fact, right now, the wireless receiver is plugged into the GoPro, which in turn is plugged into the computer so that I'm using it as my webcam. And the audio is actually coming in through the capture card interface. And even that's working okay. So kind of complicated, but happy to get this system set up too. Also with the portable 24-inch monitors. Again, did mention not the most interesting content week again. I promise, guys, I'll get there eventually, but still doing all of this setup stuff here. I did get the all of the components for the portable monitor setup here. The dual 24-inch monitors came, and finally I tested everything out and made sure it all worked together. It did, which I was happy about. I didn't have any real hiccups in the process here. I had the drivers for the displays installed on my computer. So-called display link lets you hook up these kind of displays over USB. With like a USB hub that I have. So I set up and tore down the setup a couple of times. It takes me like somewhere between 4 and 5 minutes to set it up and take it down. And so, that's like a reasonably large amount of time investment. So it kind of makes it worth my while if I'm going to be somewhere for like several hours working. Having all of that extra screen real estate rather than just my puny tablet screen really does help me be more efficient. And so I did actually test it out in the real world situation. I went to the public library on one of the Saturdays in this cycle, and I was actually pretty happy with how well it let me work. I put my headphones on in that environment and really knocked some stuff out with the 2 monitors, letting me kind of work without taking a big efficiency hit, even though I didn't have my full 4K TV as my monitor display. That's normally what I use at home, but you get the idea. Happy to test out this setup and see that it worked more or less how I had designed it and intended for it to. So, more things on the setup here. Now, actually, as to things kind of making more forward ministry progress itself, I did get the documentation for the discussion pages written up. Not a lot to say here. Maybe that sounds pretty simple. I actually had kind of a tricky time figuring out what I wanted to say to help explain what discussion pages are and how they work on the site. Now this first pass, I did kind of leave to-dos for adding screenshots for a lot of the things that I'm talking about. So, screenshots showing how various bits of the discussion page process work on the site. That's because I wanted to be able to show that you can have more than one discussion page. And right now, the only thing that I think I actually have more than one discussion page is actually the 3rd lesson in the SR4 series, and so far I only did the first one. And so I decided that I wanted to, get a couple more lessons processed. So the 2nd lesson, the 3rd lesson, and then the discussion pages for all of those, so that I'd have this example with multiple discussion pages for the same content page. Because that's something that can happen. And, I just wanted to show it was possible and explain how that worked. But in the process of actually trying to get the rest of that content processed, I ran into a roadblock. That'll be one of the last things we talk about here for this cycle, because this really blocked me for like several days here. But that's kind of what I was doing. I was getting the documentation pages written, then was going to organize several more of the lessons in the SR4 series so that I'd be able to have this example with multiple discussion pages, and then when trying to do that, got blocked by path length limits. So this was a configuration issue that I really beat my head against the wall for a while on. I was struggling through issues with path length limitations on Microsoft Windows. So I use Windows 10 on my tablet, and then Windows 11 on my desktop at home. And it turns out that Windows only lets you have full file paths of up to 260 characters by default. And a file path is like not just, it's not just like the name of the file, it's this, like my C drive, users, Steve, Dropbox, projects, etc., etc. So the complete length of this cannot exceed 260 characters, because if it does, it just won't let you exceed that. And so if you go above that, I take it for backwards compatibility reasons. Some stuff breaks in like the Windows kernel APIs or whatever. And so it doesn't out of the box support it. And so I think the reason why this hasn't been a huge priority to fix is that many people don't have an issue with this. So just as an example for me, the first discussion page that I had done that actually worked, so discussion pages are highly nested. because so this is the kind of content organization. You can see that I have my website currently set up in my Dropbox folder here, so it's automatically backing up to the cloud. So my user path, and then Dropbox projects, bibledocs.org, this is the website, and then within the site directory we go to the content directory, then the content type, which is longer topical studies, then the name of the study, which is the SR4 study, so Ichthus's SR4, Satan's World System, and then after that the name of the content page in the study. So this one was the introduction. This first lesson was the introduction, so introduction to SR4, Satan's World System. And then this right here is the name of the discussion page. So level of depth is calling many deceived too harsh, why God allows Satan control. Those were the discussion topics that we went over in this video. And so this entire path is actually 224 characters long. I put that into like a character counter on the internet. And that's less than 260, and so that's why I didn't have issues here. Now for this one, same general path, we're still in the same study, different content page this time. So this content page is actually a lot longer. And so the reason why I was having issues was because I just wanted to make the folder structure here just match the titles. I find that very intuitive, even though it leads to like long paths. I don't see a great way to do that otherwise. Like I find this the most intuitive. It matches the titles and the paths. Like why wouldn't you do that, aside from the length limits that we have here? So the title of this one, the lesson was Purpose in This Dark World Only Comes by Faith, which makes us outcasts here but chosen by God, right? And an important spiritual concept for us. And then the discussion page here is called Against Monasticism and the Idea of Complete Separation from the World. So that's not a very short file name either, right? These are the names of the folders that contain the index files that have the actual content in them. But all said and done, all of these paths together come out to be 273 characters, which exceeds the 260 that's the limit on Windows by default. Now, it wasn't like I got a message that helpfully popped up and said, hey, you can't rename this file because it exceeds the length limitation. It just didn't work. And so for a while I was sitting there scratching my head figuring out, why isn't it letting me rename the file? I don't understand. And now, thankfully, I have a lot of experience debugging stuff because I'm a software engineer. That's my full-time job, my day job. And so I have reasonably good instincts because I have to do this sort of thing a lot at work. And so, I figured out pretty quick, it must be because of the file length. Now, after I figured that out, actually resolving the problem, it was not that easy. So it took hours and many hours at that. There wasn't any simple system setting that I could check that said, yes, I would like to support longer files, thank you very much. And it does not just work. And so part of the reason why I think this took me so long to iron out was I was just incredulous that this wasn't easier to do. Like we're in 2022 now, not the dark ages of the internet. So, why can't we just have file names that aren't really short? Not file names, file paths that aren't really short. Like this stopped being a technical problem a long time ago is what I'm saying. Not when computers were very new and memory was expensive and things like that. I kind of see the case for it then, but the fact that this is so complicated to set up on like a modern Windows computer is what puzzled me. So I kept thinking that like I was just like not looking in the right place. I wasn't using the right search terms or whatever, and that if I just searched a little bit harder, I'd find like the actual real way to enable this. Because I was like, certainly it can't be this hard, right? And it actually was that hard. So the thing that I actually had to do to enable this was I had to go manually edit a registry value to turn this support for long file paths on at the operating system level. And so once I'd done that, I could rename files on the PowerShell command line to whatever I wanted, basically. I'm sure there's an upper limit, probably like the thousands of characters or whatever, but plenty long enough for me. I was just a little more than 260, probably going to end up being like under 300 most of the time, but more than 260 at any rate. And so I could rename stuff on the command line, and then it was actually working fine. Now, the problem was I still couldn't rename stuff in File Explorer. And so again, another black hole of research here going down, being like, certainly, if you can enable it at the operating system level, you can have it supported in the file manager, right? So File Explorer is the default file manager on Windows, and I figure if they support it in the operating system, it wouldn't make any sense for them not to support it in the file manager, right? But so I asked, who would design things that way so that the operating system supports it, but the file manager that ships with the operating system doesn't? Well, Microsoft apparently, because here we are in 2022, and you still actually cannot. It's officially impossible for you to deal with long paths in Windows like natively. You just can't do it. So even though the operating system supports it, if you go dig into the bowels and you change the registry value, File Explorer just will not. It cannot and they have no plans of making it in the future because there's stuff that relies on File Explorer and for backwards compatibility reasons and stuff. I mean, I was reading some of this. It doesn't even sound like they're going to support it in the future. And so after all of this research, I was kind of put out. I was disappointed because I'd spent all this time, and then I had to go actually research file managers myself, because if File Explorer can't do it, I have to get a different one, because I do want to have the longer paths, again, because they match the titles of my content, and I think that makes sense. And so after all of this, I had to go research file managers, because I'm going to be using this a lot, and I have other requirements too. I use Dropbox, and so it needs to integrate with the Smart Sync functionality that's a part of Dropbox, for example. It needs to let me support the longer paths and stuff. And so long story short, after all that research, I settled on a free option. It's called Free Commander. I'm pretty happy with it. I played around with it for a while and got it set up, but now after all of this, I can properly name my folders for the discussion pages what I want them to be. So, with the name of the content page and then the name of the discussion page, I can have it all match the titles so that it's intuitive. But it took me like 2 or 3 days, going through all of this on top of my job. I actually sacrificed an entire Sunday to this. And it just took me a long time to figure out how to actually get this all to work. And I'm still kind of disappointed that it's so hard to enable this. It just seems like it's something that oughtn't be that hard, given that we live in the modern day. But apparently it is. And so, this was something that sucked up a bunch of time. And this is one of those reasons why I didn't make as much progress on the content front as I wanted to. All right, so that was this cycle, a lot more on the workflow stuff. I did write up the documentation for the discussion pages. That did get me closer here. And so now that I fixed this issue with the paths, the file paths, so that I can actually name the folders what I want, and I kind of got myself unstuck. The next thing after this is going to be organizing those early lessons in the SR4 series so that I can get through the third one that has 2 discussion pages, so that I can finally take the screenshots, so that I can finally finish the documentation page, so that I can finally publish it to the website. So that's going to be priority number 1 here in the short term. And then after I finish that, I'm going to turn my focus to finishing the full organization for all the rest of the content in the SR4 series. And so once I do that, I will be done with phase 2 in the plan that I'd had kind of for moving forward here in the ministry. I explained this back, I think like 2 ministry progress summaries ago. So here we are talking about what's in phase 2. That was going to be fully coding support for discussion pages, writing the documentation for discussion pages, that's what I just did, and then catching up on all of the organization here. After this, I will start making new ministry content again. This is kind of when I'm going to give myself permission to be a little bit more proactive about making new content again, because I will have caught up on some of the old stuff. Then I'll mix, catching up on the rest of the Peripatiology series that's already up on YouTube with making new stuff so I don't burn myself out. And then I'm also probably going to start getting a little bit more involved in local stuff. Once I'm kind of making new stuff again on a consistent schedule, I didn't want to go, start getting really involved and really busy until I kind of started making stuff again. Got that process set up, and saw what my time commitments were like and things like that. But hoping to start making new content as well as getting involved in local stuff, maybe even starting up the local Bible study here at the house. My roommate and I have organized our house for this. Pretty hyped about it. Hope it turns out well, again, if we can find people who are interested in this. But all of this can kind of start once I finally get that content, once I finally start making content again consistently, which is going to happen as soon as I finish the organization here. So that's why I said I am close. I am getting ever closer to this as I keep going here. But looking forward to hopefully being able to finish that so that I can start making new content again, and so that all these other things can happen. So now that I finally finished the path issues, I'm going to get the rest of that content organized for the first few things, then publish the documentation page, and then get all of the other pages organized too. So I have probably like 15 videos or so that I need to do this for. I'm going to try to do like 1 a day or something. Make sure that I split out the work so that I don't burn out from it. And then after that, that's when I'll get to the other things. All right, well, closing out here, I know, again, this one maybe not the most interesting ever, but I do hope that anyone who's interested in following some of the things that goes into building the websites and the content and everything, it really is a process that takes some time, again, especially for those of us without lots of audio and video experience. And so I'm learning a lot as I go here, but I am hoping that once I set all of this sort of thing up for the first time, once I get the process worked out, then moving forward in the future, things will just kind of happen more naturally. I'll be able to make new content at a much faster pace, and kind of turn my focus to content generation rather than some of these configuration matters that have taken my time so far. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope this was helpful in explaining kind of where I got to up through the 23rd of October, and I will pick up in the next video in 2 weeks' time.